morning, everyone. Can you hear me in the back? Great, thank you. Do we have any Hunter S. Thompson fans in the house today? Okay. Can you give me a one-sentence summary of either or both of these books?
Things got really nuts.
I like it. Somebody else? Lots of drugs. And that's my presentation in a nutshell. Because this is Colorado, and we have retail marijuana, and I've spent a lot of time in conversations about process and how to regulate retail marijuana. So we're going to talk about fear and loathing, not in Las Vegas, not on the campaign trail, but in high-performance government. If you would like to tweet, I will put in a shameless plug because I want to win the Twitter contest at Sarah E. Moss. So as Nick said, I work for the Denver Fire Department. I've been there about 5 years. My title is Strategic Programs and Government Affairs Manager, which means I do process improvement. I write strategic plans, and sometimes I get to pose for photos with city council members in front of training fires. My background is mostly in electoral politics and working for elected officials. So my why, as Simon Sinek would say, there's 2 reasons I do this work in process improvement and high-performance government. As I said, I've worked for a lot of elected officials. I've sung in bands with some as well. This is our governor. I've worked for 2 mayors. I've worked for Attorney General Eric Holder at the Department of Justice, for President Obama and Vice President Biden, and on 3 presidential campaigns and a whole lot of other campaigns I won't rattle off. In an election, in a campaign, we say that we have 3 most precious resources: time, people, and money. And you can always raise more money, and you can always recruit more people, especially if you have money to pay them, but you cannot create more time. There's 24 hours in a day. There's 1,440 minutes in a day, which is important, because I used to do scheduling in advance, where we help important people schedule their lives in 5-minute increments. So all y'all in your 1-hour meetings, no, not having it. 50 minutes max, because I need time to go to the bathroom and get somewhere else in between. Use your time wisely. How many days are there until Election Day? 173. This is how my mind works. Time is precious. So the other reason I do this work is because I lived in Washington, D.C. twice, and this is what I saw on September 11th. Time is precious. Let's not waste it. Let's give our citizens, our residents, our friends, our neighbors good, effective government. So I work for the City and County of Denver, just down the road. It took me 24 minutes to get here today. And we have this wonderful program called Denver Peak Academy. You may have heard of it. One of our founders, Brian Elms, wrote a book about it with Governing Magazine. It's a really fast, short, fun read. I highly recommend it. And what Peak Academy is and what it isn't: it is in-house. It's employee-led. It's not consultants that drop in and out and then nothing gets done after they leave. It's institutionalized. These are permanent positions funded out of our general fund. It's not the political whim of whatever elected official is in office. It is customizable to any education level. It's not full of Lean Six Sigma jargon, although that's the concepts that it uses. We have a 4-hour green belt class and a 1-week black belt class. And then we have employee partnerships where someone from the Peak Academy staff will embed themselves in an agency for a certain number of months and really work one-on-one with all the employees in that agency. It is not a suggestion box where someone can say, you know what, you should fix this. These are tools where people can now identify and fix what is bothering them themselves, along with their teams. And these are tools. These are not weapons. That is a key point. So my first innovation improvement, I really took it to heart. And I went home and was thinking about voice of the customer. Now, why is my cat Dobby walking past the scratching post to scratch on the chair? And it was as simple as he wanted to scratch standing up, not down here. So we fixed this problem pretty easily by just flipping the scratching post 90 degrees. And I thought, this is great, I can do this. So I went back to my job at the fire department. And it wasn't quite that easy. Does anybody ever go to a conference or take a class and you get really excited and you go back to your office and you're like, y'all, guess what? Yeah, and everybody's not quite as excited as you are. I am guilty of this many times. So there will be unmarked obstacles, and I'm going to tell you about a few of them today. So these are my aha moments, as Oprah would say. Lesson 1, I call this the corollary to the Taylor Swift rule. Who knows what the Taylor Swift rule is? Haters gonna hate. Also, shake it off, a good one. I call this one, leaders gonna lead, or not. So then Denver, the mayor created this Peak Academy program. And some of our mayoral appointees, our department heads, really embraced this. One of them, Stacey Laux, the former director of excise and licenses, called Peak during her first week on the job because she realized she was facing major structural issues and had a lot of unhappy customers. To be fair, Stacey's department is about 30 people. They all work in the same office Monday through Friday. So putting them all through the same training was a lot logistically easier than, say, 700 firefighters and 38 firehouses across the city working 24-hour shifts, and if you want to give them a training when they're not working, you have to pay them overtime. There's some challenges there. That said, all the city departments did not embrace this program the same way that Stacey did. I had a firehouse captain who wanted to give some greenbelt training to everybody in his firehouse. 3 shifts, A shift, B shift, C shift. And the idea was that I and one of the Peak Academy staffers would go to the firehouse for 4 hours. Well, the training's 4 hours, but it might take us 8, because if they get a 911 call, they have to go and then come back. We'll pick up where we left off. And then we'll decide, all right, firefighters, what do you want to fix about your house? And then probably we could replicate that in 37 other houses across the city. Well, this captain runs it up the chain of command, and someone in his chain of command says, no, we're not doing this. So I went to go see that person, and he said, we don't need those people coming in to tell us how to clean the bathroom faster. And I said, well, those people are me, and we're going to work on whatever the firefighters want to work on. I'm not going to tell them anything about what to do. So why did that happen? This person hadn't had the training. He hadn't been told by his boss that this was important. It's possible his boss didn't get along with the founder of Peak Academy. It's possible that this person didn't like me. It's possible this person didn't like that captain of that firehouse. We may never know, but these are good things for you to keep in mind as you're approaching people about projects. So while the those people guy was like running into a brick wall, there's another brick wall that I got behind. Some of these firefighters figured out they weren't going to get this training on duty, but they knew it was a priority of the mayor, and they were studying for promotional exams to lieutenant, captain, engineer, assistant chief. So one of their study groups asked me to come to the union hall when they were off duty. I went and did this 4 times, and I presented the 4-hour greenbelt training. They volunteered and didn't get paid for it because they knew it was important to the mayor. So I've trained over 70 people on their off day with these tools. I don't know if they're using them, but I hope they are. I hope there was a mindset shift in the firehouses. And someday we'll know. So lesson number 2, after leaders gonna lead or not, is that change can be scary, and you all know this. You've all worked with people that get nervous about things. You've probably gotten nervous about things. I know I have. So one of the things that the Denver Fire Department prides itself on is they run a fire truck or fire engine with 4 firefighters, not 3. And the idea behind that is if you're in a fire, you can have 2 in and 2 out. You always have a partner. This is a personal safety thing. So I did one of these greenbelt trainings, and somebody says, well, if we were more efficient, this sounds like a way to get us to run rigs with 3 people instead of 4. And I said, that's a legitimate concern. But what I can tell you is, our mayor has promised that no one will eliminate a job. If you figure out how to do jobs more efficiently, like, say, filling potholes, and you could fill potholes with a crew of 3 instead of 4, we'll make another crew. We're not going to lay people off. And nobody is talking about running a fire engine with 3 people instead of 4. So I don't want you to worry about that. Have these answers when people express these concerns. This is a story that's in the Peak Academy book. Somebody in the sheriff's department worked at the impound lot figured out that the huge piece of his job just didn't need to exist. but he wasn't quite willing to say that out loud because if he didn't need to exist at the impound lot, he knew he wasn't going to get laid off. But he was real afraid he was going to have to go work at the detention center. So think about what this means for people in their personal safety, in their job security, in their psychological safety. Anybody that's taken any kind of psychology class, you've seen the Maslow's hierarchy of needs pyramid. And they're often very physical safety-oriented things in a lot of our government jobs, whether it's in public works, whether it's in Parks and Rec, whether it's any kind of equipment. There are safety concerns. This isn't just, I want my ideal job. This is very physical. So be thinking about these different layers of security that people need. And always, the WIFM principle. What's in it for me? Have these answers. Why is it beneficial for people to make change? It's great for us citizens, but that doesn't help me as an individual who wants satisfaction out of my job and wants to enjoy going to work every day. It's even better if it's their idea and their reason for why change needs to happen. So get good at asking questions that get people thinking. Lesson number 3, change is scary, but change is also contagious. You'll be amazed what happens if you embrace the Gandhi quote, be the change. So at Peak Academy, they say focus on what you can control. So the first thing I could control, besides my own apartment and the cat scratcher, was my desk. And it was kind of a mess. So I used the tools I learned in Peak Academy, the 6S, and I organized everything. And people noticed. Actually, 2 people came and said, "Are you quitting?" This was uncomfortable. They weren't quite sure why everything looked so neat. I started using production boards to track my work. So my boss didn't have to come ask me what I was working on. He could just stop by my desk, even if I wasn't there, and see, oh, that's where our city council ordinances are in the process. I had it all visually on my desk. I helped my team through some process improvements where we did some process mapping. And in the fire department, people have nicknames, and I knew I'd finally made it when I got a nickname. And that nickname is Sticky Note. We mapped out our waste in our process. This particular process was how do we schedule fire station tours or crews to go to community events. Because my philosophy is we're getting a 91% for fire in our National Citizen Survey, but not so much in community preparedness, fire prevention. If we can do all our non-emergency services as well as we respond to 911 calls, we're going to be in really good shape. So we mapped the waste in our process, and one person wrote that we're wasting a lot of sticky notes in this exercise. So there's room for humor too. And then a really interesting thing happened when I came to work one day. I had this wall in my office where I had sticky notes of process improvement ideas, and I've been kind of slowly working through each one of these things. And my title's manager, but no one reports to me. I have 0 positional authority. I have only influential authority. And I came in one day, and there were sticky notes on my ideas wall that were not in my handwriting. Other people saw this work that was happening, and they said, hey, will you help me with this process? Hey, I've got an idea. Can you help us? And these were processes I don't work on at all. So I kind of struggled with this because none of this is stuff I can control. I don't even have a role in it, but I could come in and facilitate a conversation for a couple hours. Sure, I'll help with that. And then one of my colleagues, a lieutenant, came to me and said, I'm drowning, I need help. You manage time well, you're so organized, help me. And I said, have I got the thing for you? You're going to black belt. So we got it cleared with her supervisor, and she went to black belt for a week. And her office was even messier than mine, but it's not anymore. And I go to her office now, and there's an impact versus effort matrix of all her ideas of projects she wants to work on. And then there's a Kanban board of things that she's done and doing and completed. And not long after that, some of the other firefighters in her office start seeing the changes that she's made. And they ask to go to black belt. So now the 3 captains above this lieutenant have gone to black belt. And this is a production board of one of those captains. Nothing fancy, Sharpie and a piece of paper. So here's how many inspections we've done this month, and here's how many we've done the last month. And we're starting to track what we're doing. and improve and get better. So change is contagious, yes. And you need to know your ecosystem. Can be a huge shift for a lot of people. And it's up to you to help make it comfortable and exciting for them. So a lot of times we'll see a process in a big organization, not just in government, because I've worked corporate as well. And I go, why do we do this way? And what's the answer? That's the way we've always done it. Or in the fire department, where we rotate firefighters through positions in the office and then send them back to the firehouse after 18 months or 24 months. The answer is, well, that's how the last captain did it. So we need to have respect for our history and tradition and think, somebody had a reason for doing this. But if we don't know what it was, or it doesn't still make sense, let's not keep doing it. We had a public information officer 10 years ago that sent press releases via fax. But we don't do that anymore because the media doesn't want faxes. Reporters want tweets. So that's what we do now. So my first question is, well, that's the way we've always done it. Is it in the U.S. Constitution? And that kind of catches people off guard. So I invite you to use these questions. No. Is it a federal law or a FEMA regulation? No. Is it a National Fire Protection Association standard? No. Is it a state of Colorado law or constitutional amendment? No. Is it a City and County of Denver charter amendment or an ordinance? And even if it is, you've got somebody like me with a government affairs title who can help change this stuff. And that really gets people thinking. So if this is just a policy we have in the fire department, we can change that really easily. Or even if it's not a policy, it's not written down, we can change that like that. We call those just do it's. This is mind-blowing for people. And when you start asking their opinion, that can be life-changing. The lieutenant I told you about that went to black belt, and at the end of our black belt class, we give a 5-minute Ignite presentation of here's 3 ideas I have for improving things I work on. She started crying at the end of her presentation and said, no one has ever asked my opinion like this before. This stuff is really powerful. But again, this is change. You're helping people come out of these cocoons they were maybe forced into. They might not be happy to be there, but maybe nobody's ever asked. So if you think about your innovation bell curve, you really want to start with these people who are excited to innovate, that they're passionate about their jobs. You're going to have people at the other end here that are never going to be excited about anything. Ignore them. They're not worth your energy. They might get on board eventually after all these other innovators and early adopters have, but they might not. So focus your energy down here on the excited people. So who do you start with? Do you start with the retiree who's already halfway out the door? Probably not. Do you start with the retiree that's counting the days because they want to make the most impact they can every day they have left in this job? Maybe. So there's a TED Talk I really love. It's called, I have it on here, How to Start a Movement. And there's one shirtless dancing guy on a hill at a music festival. And when it's just one guy, he looks kind of crazy, right? But then another guy joins him. And the first guy embraces him. They literally hold hands and dance for a few seconds. So it's the first follower that has this power that's creating this movement. And then a few more people join in. And then more people join in. So there's more people dancing than there are sitting. And that's the kind of movement you want to create, because these kinds of change, these kinds of process improvements, innovation, high performance things can be contagious if you manage them right. And I'm telling you my mistakes, so maybe you don't have to make them. So one of my favorite quotes is by former CNN journalist Candy Crowley. And it goes, "Be brave. Most times the answer to what's the worst that can happen is nothing you can't handle." And I ask myself this. If I'm at the top of a ski run that's a little scary, if I'm about to start a new project at work, if I'm trying to take a vulnerable moment in my personal life, I stop and ask myself this question: what's the worst that can happen? And maybe I come up with 5 or 10 scenarios, but the answer to all of them is usually nothing I can't handle. With skiing, the goal is not to go down in the sled pulled behind the snowmobile. That's a good one to keep. So as I mentioned, I used to work for President Obama, and one of the events I did for him, the microphone didn't work. And there's a military unit that's in charge of all the audiovisual. And by the way, let's give it up to our AV crew today. Thank you. And so this woman I worked with is in the U.S. Army. She was in charge of all the AV that day. The microphone didn't work, and she had to write a report about it. And I said, hey, Mallory, I'm really sorry you have to do this paperwork. And she said, you know what, Sarah? I've been to Afghanistan. Today, nobody shot at me and nobody died. It's going to be okay. So that is my reminder to you. I work on top of a fire station. I hear the garage door. I hear the sirens. What they're doing needs to happen in the next 4 minutes is an emergency. What most of us are doing on our computers or in a meeting, which is not an hour, which is 50 minutes, not an emergency. You have some time to be thoughtful and deliberate. So in the session description, I said I want to take you from fear and loathing to sunshine and rainbows. And in order to get rainbows, there has to be rain. So there will be water, and sometimes it might be your tears. But you come back the next day and you keep going. So in order to get on this road of sunshine and rainbows, I want you to remember that sometimes your rainbows are going to be made of sticky notes. They're going to be process maps. They're going to be brainstorms. But that's how you get people involved. You give them a voice. One thing I learned, if I had a table here of people of different ranks in the fire department, I had to make a rule of we're all going by our first names. No one's pulling rank. And everyone has to get up and stick their own sticky note on the wall, not hand them to the lowest ranking person. So know your organizational culture and do what you need to do to work within it or around it. So one final thought I'll leave you with. Who knows who this well-dressed gentleman is in the ermine jacket? Think circa 1775. King George III, correct. So our U.S. government was founded on a revolt from a king. The American character is that we disdain authority, but we crave leadership. We're so complicated. So as Schoolhouse Rock would say, we have a 3-ring government. In Denver, we have a 5-ring government because we also have an elected auditor, an elected clerk, and recorder. But let's just stick with 3. So this was created on purpose to have checks and balances, right? We want to be deliberate. We want to be thoughtful. But we also don't need to take a lot of time on a simple form because our customers really don't want a lot of debate and process if they just want to sign up for a kickball league, or they just want a fire station tour, or they just want a permit to modify their deck on their house, right? So our customers, they want us to be thoughtful and deliberate, but they don't want to think about it. They just want their stuff right now, or right meow, as the case may be. So, I promised you fear and loathing, sunshine and rainbows, and drugs. So if you have any questions about marijuana regulation or anything else, please come see me. I'll be here the rest of the day and all day tomorrow, and thank you very much.